legislation also never came to a vote. The Reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. Wisconsin Representative Gwen Moore is a co-sponsor and also a victim of sexual violence.
I'm reminded of a time that I got into an automobile, a man I thought was a personal friend, to go get some fried chicken. And he pulled in behind some vacant buildings, raped me, choked me almost to death. And when I went to the hospital, I was encouraged by an advocate. This was in the 1970s, long before there was a Violence Against Women Act, long before there was a Rape Shield Act. And I took him to court, and indeed, I was on trial.
And that is the passion with which Representative Moore argues for this Violence Against Women Act reauthorization. She joins me now from Capitol Hill. First, Congresswoman Moore, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for speaking with us today. This act includes additional protections for the LGBT community, illegal immigrants, Native American tribes. Why didn't this come up for a vote? Is it specifically the additions of those three elements that stopped this from getting a vote in the House?
Absolutely, Victor. That's the reason. The Violence Against Women Act has always been bipartisan, but this time, because of best practices from the advocates, from people in law enforcement, they saw the need to expand this to communities of color, to Native Americans, to the LGBT community, and young women who needed protection on campuses. And in particular, the U visas, the immigrants, and the Native American women became so contentious that people in the House just couldn't see themselves clear to pass it. And it's a shame that we're at this point, because now we have to start all over in the 113th conference and Congress, and it's a shame because this bill had some very, very hard times getting through the Senate committee structure, and certainly we're very concerned about whether or not we're going to have these particular communities ignored. When you look at Native Americans, for example, there's a report put out by the Justice Department on the declination of services. 52% of women of crimes committed on tribal lands were not prosecuted by federal prosecutors, which have jurisdiction there. 67% of those were sexual assaults and domestic violence. And we're very concerned about the sequester and further cuts that will impair our ability to protect these vulnerable women.
Let's talk specifically about the Native American community, because I know that that was one of the portions that was most contentious in the House version and getting this passed, or the lack thereof. There was this coal and ISA compromise, because the problem here with the Native American community specifically is they have their own tribal law, and you cannot prosecute a non-native under tribal law. This would have given them an opportunity to send it back to federal court. Would you have accepted that compromise to get this passed?
Well, the details of the compromise are not known to me. What is known to me, Victor, is that we have intelligence about people who literally have dragged their victims to tribal land to commit these heinous crimes, these sexual assaults and battery, because they know they can't get prosecuted on tribal lands. These tribal lands have become a veritable, free land for sexual assault. Non-native men know that they can do this with impunity. And so I think it's extremely important to give tribal courts some jurisdiction, very narrow, just as it relates to domestic violence in these matters, because we see, and law enforcement sees, that that is where the true gap occurs. And I of course, get a lot of correspondence from women who talk about their problems, and there's a clear gap in enforcement And somehow men seem to know that. This is one of the particular areas where there is.
Very quickly, because we're running out of time. It was a struggle in the Senate, but eventually you got Republican women to sign on and vote for this. 68 members of the Senate voted for it, and there was even some bipartisan support in the House. How confident are you or optimistic that this will be renewed now in the 113th?
Well, you know, we're going to keep working at it. I'm certainly going to keep working at it. There are more women in the Senate now. There's a greater number of Democrats in the House. And we're going to keep working at this. And thanks to people like Victor to keep this problem visible before the public. We just cannot have the male-dominated House of Representatives stop support and help and protection for women.
And you think it's specifically for an insensitivity to women?
I think so. I mean, you know, I'm reading a letter from Chris, you know, and she feels like I do, lucky to be alive. You know, her husband, even after 2 court orders, was able to beat her, burn her house, kill her children's pets in front of them, and he went to jail once but got out. He was still allowed to have joint custody after all of these events. Yes, there's an insensitivity to the plight that many hundreds of thousands of women face, and women die every single day because of domestic violence.